Hi, my name is Victoria Badia, and today I'll be talking to you about SAT and ACT tests and how they're not effective examination tools. Now, imagine being told you're too dumb by society standards and then following that, being told you're not good enough. Nobody wants to be told these things. It doesn't feel good, and it doesn't make anybody feel good about themselves, nor does it encourage a progressing society. SATs and ACTs do not measure the true value of a high school student or any student for that matter, and it just simply limits their opportunities. The SAT and ACT are standardized tests that high school students take at the end of their high school year. Sometimes their junior year, often the earliest they can take it is their sophomore year. These tests are standardized tests that go over each and every subject that they learned in school, and it takes how well they do on that test and it produces scores on a ranking bar. Now, the SAT and ACT have a very small spectrum. Some students can thrive in all areas of high school, extracurriculars, academics, and simply they're just not good at taking tests. We found in society today that over 70% of students actually are really, really bad at taking tests. The anxiety and the stress of sitting in a room and having problems and bubbling and the environment they're in actually stresses them out and doesn't make them think clearly. So you have a straight A student who faces the struggle of these tests, and then they think that they aren't smart, they aren't doing well in their studies, when they are, when they truly do grasp the concepts and understand how to do the processing and everything. They just are really bad at taking tests. And you have certain students who do well in other subjects than overall all of them. You have your main subjects: science, history, math, and English. Some kids are absolute brainiacs at math. They know how to solve everything, they know how to do it, simple math in their head, even complicated math in their head. Then there are, of course, other students that are a little bit harder, that have a little bit of a harder time doing math. Math isn't simple, but some of these students could be absolute poets in English and do an incredible job, can go on and write books because of how well they are in English. These tests, they don't help kids at all. You have these students that, like I said, they're really good at subjects and really good at certain things in high school, and they know they are, and then they come to these tests and they think, well, maybe I'm not that good. And that brings down their confidence level by 1,000%. What are they supposed to do? They're like, well, I've been learning this, I've been doing this, and now all of a sudden I don't know it? Because these tests were made up by teachers and scholars and professors that are like, well, they should know this by now, and they should know how to do this. And maybe they do know it, but like I said, they just aren't good at taking tests. A lot of kids deal with anxiety and frustration and stress, and they do bad. They do poorly on these standardized tests. You have the STAR test, which is a Texas state mandated test, which every kid takes at least every year. You're supposed to take 5 within high school here in Texas. And like I said, they can do amazing on those tests because they're core subject tests. Or they can do awful because, like I said, they are horrible in certain subjects. There's nothing wrong with that. But even those tests as well may not even measure a student's actual knowledge. Why are we measuring these kids off of a test as opposed to how they are actually doing in class? The argument for that could be, well, these kids could be cheating and we just don't know, and that's why they have good grades. Yes and no. Okay, they're cheating. What kind of education programs do we have if they're capable of cheating and nobody knows it? If they're capable of cheating their way through school? You don't become first in your class. No one becomes valedictorian for cheating all 4 years. It doesn't happen that way. Those kids are genuinely smart and they genuinely put in the work. And you can tell when a kid genuinely puts in the work, going to study groups, making study groups, tutoring, such things. And I had a valedictorian that did horrible on her SATs and an ACT. but she retook it over and over so many times, paying for this test because she knew the material. She just was having a really hard time sitting down for hours in a timed test. It gave her so much anxiety. Now, I mean, another main point to this is, why are we pushing our students and our kids to be taking tests that hurt their confidence, actually minimize it to absolutely nothing, and raise their stress levels? I mean, why would we willingly put kids through that? We talk about a society that we want to limit student and young adult anxiety and stress and depression, but here we are making them take a test and then comparing them to other kids. Because that's what the test does. You get your test report at the end and it'll tell you, oh, you're in this percent of percentile, and certain kids in your class or your age group, they're hitting here and here and here for the test scores. This is where you are, though. How does that make any kid feel good at all? Because then they go around and, I mean, they pass these out during school hours so friends can go to each other and be like, hey, what'd you get? What's your score? What's your score? I got a 1400. What'd you get? Oh, you got 1000? That's awful. You know, like, how does that make any kid feel good about themselves at all? I mean, here they are thinking, all right, like I'm handling school, I'm getting good grades, like we're doing great, and then they get their report and they're like, I guess I'm not as smart as I thought I was. That doesn't encourage any sort of growth and positivity in a class setting or in any setting at all. Because then they go home and they tell their parents, oh, I got a 1050. And the parents like, oh, I thought you were a smart kid. You know, who's supposed to learn from that or feel good about themselves from that at all? Nobody. That doesn't make anybody feel good to be told, well, you're not as smart as you thought you were. Simply because, I mean, what, you're bad at taking a test? Or you're really, really bad at English? Or you're not even really, really bad, you're just not as good. Or you're just not as great as they have set the bar for you in each of the subjects, therefore, there's your 1050. You know, and alongside the students not feeling good at all amongst their peers and their parents and their family, they don't get to feel good enough for secondary education. We're in a country that's supposed to be pushing kids to go into secondary education. We live in El Paso, Texas, a city in which a lot of students would end up being first generation secondary education kids. Kids that have worked so hard to get as far as they are, go through high school, get a diploma, get straight A's, to then take this standardized test and have it all thrown away that way. Because that's the other thing, is secondary education has standards. And if you don't meet those standards, you're not allowed to go. And some of them use SAT scores and ACT scores as make or break acceptance. It's, oh, you have a great GPA for high school? Amazing. You have an amazing entry essay? Awesome. But wait, you got a 1050 on your SAT? I'm sorry, we can't have you here. We don't have kids that hit 1050s. You know, these tests are just, like, why are we using standardized testing to measure if a kid should be accepted into secondary education? Just because let's, you know, hypothetically speaking, let's say, all right, they get a 1050. They really don't know the material. But here they are, getting good grades, doing sports, doing theater, doing yearbook, other things, part of the community, you know, serving at their church. They have a full-time or part-time job. You're gonna deny a kid who is clearly a hard worker simply because a number on a paper. Simply because they bubbled A instead of C. So what are we promoting here? Just intelligence? We're not going to promote kids that are hard workers. You're not going to accept a kid into your college because of everything they've shown you that they've done and they've worked really, really hard for. So you have these first generation kids who work extremely hard all their lives. They have to work harder than kids who are born here. with parents that are US citizens, with parents that have gone to college, with parents with alma maters. Just because the next generation is the future. Taking care of them should be the most important thing in all bases. Thank you.